welcome to Looking Ahead, back to in-person, hybrid, and virtual for the future. So this is our number 7 out of 8 events in a series called the ABM Events Collective. We've been hosting this since March, and it's been a wonderful series, so thank you all for showing up. With that said, let's invite our panelists to the stage. Roberto, why don't you kick off? Let's start with you. We'd love to just hear a little bit more about you and your background, your company. Yeah. We'd also love to learn about just the number of events that you've executed since pivoting to virtual and a fun personal fact.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thanks for having me here, and thanks for hosting this on Welcome. I happen to be the co-founder and CEO of the platform. You know, one of the things, just kind of quick shout outs, I love when people post locations in chat because it just kind of puts people in a place, because in this virtual world, we're always wondering where are people coming from. Which segues to our company size. We are at about 55 people full time right now. And every time I'm meeting or interviewing someone, I'm always asking, where are you joining us from? Because our company is spread nationally at this point. Fun fact, as a company, we host events around the clock, right? And so I'll be coming and adding to the conversation from that perspective in terms of what we're seeing in the market. And a little fun fact is that I'm a new dad. We had a quarantine baby. She's about a year and 4 months right now. She's amazing. And in that time, my wife and I decided to move to Puerto Rico to be closer to family while we're raising the baby. And here we are. We get to choose where we live and work, and we're giving it a go. So
beautiful. That's a congratulations on the baby. That's wonderful. Thanks for joining us. And Kirstin.
Hello, everybody. Delighted to be here. My name is Kirstin Burke. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Data Endure. We are in sunny San Jose, California. We are one of the smaller organizations up here on the panel. We're about 45 people strong. We've been in the market about 35 years, and part of our business is about a 3-year-old startup. So we're kind of blending old and new in our business. We've done about 10 events over the last year, virtual events. And fun fact about myself, I am a Hamilton freak. I reluctantly went to see it the first time and fell in love with it. I saw it 3 more times, and I just heard that it's reopening again this fall, so I will be trucking on down, one of the first people in line to see it again.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Kirstin. All right, Janna.
Hey there, I'm Janna Erickson. I'm the Director of Events at Drift, which is the leading conversational marketing and sales platform. We have done quite a few events in the last year. We did a huge pivot, switching to virtual. Had a lot of fun actually working with all the different companies and partnering with different people. But we ran around 17 of our own events, but then participated in a total of 42 events on the sponsorship side too as well. So busy year. And Kirstin, one thing I think you'd find interesting is that I interviewed Alex Lacamoire at one of the events, from the director of Hamilton. So that wasn't my fun fact, but when you said that, it made me think of it. Yeah, it was amazing. He discussed all about the virtual experience, which was really exciting. I guess my fun fact is that I did get a pandemic puppy. So I have a 8-month-old chocolate Labrador named Ernest.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Janna. And Carrina.
Hi, glad to be here. So I'm Carrina Ekvall. I am from Minnesota. So it's 4 seasons, construction. That's kind of what we're known for. But I'm from Minnesota, and I'm the industry marketing director for manufacturing at Epicor Software. I have about 20 years marketing experience and 14 years focused on technology companies. Been with Epicor almost 5 years now and responsible for both net new and customer. As far as Epicor, just a little background on them. They've been in business for almost 50 years. We have approximately 3,800 employees, 120,000 cloud customers, and we're across 150 countries. So very big organization. Again, I focus on the manufacturing industry, and for Epicor, we really have that industry-specific ERP solutions, but we also have distribution, lumber, and building materials, as well as retailers. I would say as far as events, We really did all of these things before the pandemic. We had virtual summits, we had in person. I would say, we have a ton of webinars always for our customer, as well as we do sponsorships with for net new for our prospect side. Probably a handful of those, but I would say we increased probably about 15 additional webinars. And then we added some of these like mini virtual summits, I would say, which are more 2 to 3 hours long versus a full day or just an hour. And I would say, let's see, personal fact. So Minnesota is known for 10,000 lakes or 10,000 plus lakes. And when I was a little girl, I learned how to water ski, downhill ski, all of that. But from the water side, summer, I kind of stopped skiing in my 20s. And last year, because, why not? It's a fun year. I tried it again and I was able to get up. So I was really happy about that accomplishment.
Very nice. That's awesome. Thank you, Carrina. And Ray.
Hey, everybody. Hello from San Francisco. My name is Ray Letta. I'm the global events producer for Intuit. And if you don't know Intuit per se, you probably have interacted with one of our softwares very recently. We published TurboTax. We also published QuickBooks and Mint. We are over 10,000 employees worldwide. Myself, I put together about 7 global events, and these are usually big events with external partners and everything like that. But as a group within Intuit, over 25 virtual events ranging from all hands, investor days, business days, that kind of stuff. I belong to a group called Brand Experiences and Storytelling. So basically, this is what we do. We put together events both for internal audience and for our customers as well. And fun fact about me, I'm an avid traveler, but since I couldn't travel, I took out my frustrations on every national park in California. So I hiked every one of the 9 national parks during the year. Wow. So there you go.
That's amazing. Wow. Your All Trails app must be complete.
Yeah. I'm an avid All Trails person. So
nice. That's beautiful. Great. So panelists, thank you for introducing yourselves. Let's move into the first question. So I want to start this off with just setting the stage, right? So just very briefly, let's look at a little snapshot. We're about 15, 16 months in since the great pause, as most like to say, and just want to level set. So snapshot of the events that your team has organized since the pandemic. So again, I know you guys shared a little bit of that in your intros, but if you could just go a little bit more into detail about the formats and the agenda, and the flow and the length. Let's go ahead and start with Kirstin.
Before the COVID pause, we were using a lot of outside organizations to help with our audience development, bring people in for the in-person events. And it was a very interesting post, as we all started to try to get our feet under us, April, May last year. We turned back to those folks thinking, well, they've figured out how to pivot. And we really found the folks that really specialized in person that we had leaned on really weren't able to facilitate that change effectively. They were still charging the same amount for a very different experience. We tried a couple and they really fell short. So we decided to start doing things on our own. And we thought, well, we're going to really focus on existing accounts. We're going to focus on people that were in our pipeline. One of the things that we found was folks weren't really going out and finding new partners, but they were really leaning on their existing partners and relationships. So that's where we spent a lot of time, probably the first 6 months. We did what we found were effective were probably 1.5 hours, 2 hour wine and cheese events, things where part of it was social and just kind of checking in with people and saying, hey, how you doing? But then really helping guide people. The business that we're in is really around helping organizations be more digitally resilient with their data. And so folks were really struggling with people are moving everywhere, data's everywhere, what do we do? And so it was really conversations that we held with people that really helped move the needle on our events. We did later find a couple of organizations that did kind of a meeting, one-on-one meetings that we found to be very effective and in fact more effective than we could do in person because we were able to go nationwide and see people all over the place. So those were really where we found something that we were not strong in. All of a sudden, we became strong in, hosting our own events, and then just finding a couple of real trusted partners to help us hone in on one-on-one meetings.
Yeah, beautiful. And just a small follow-up question, which I'll ask each panelist: were you mostly focused on customers, prospects, a mix? What was that balance like for your strategy?
We were very focused on new business, net new business. That's really what we were trying to stir up, if you will. We found that people we had not already created some kind of a dialogue with, and not necessarily a strong pipeline customer, but folks who didn't know who we were. That really slowed down during COVID. I think people, as you're hunkering down and taking care of your families and your business, you turn to people you trust, and you turn to people that you have some kind of awareness. So, we turned out getting more business from customers, existing customers than we expected, converted some pipeline prospects. And now the last few months, we've really seen an up kind of net new relationships, net new conversations with new prospects.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Janna next on that question.
Yeah, definitely. So when the pandemic started, we had already were in planning mode for all of our in-person events, and they were quite large, so a little bit different. We're about a 500-person company. We had done a series of events called Hypergrowth before. That was our annual event. We were planning on going to London for an audience of around 2,000 people, and then again to Austin in October for around 6,000. So we were kind of stunted on that. And then also we were participating in a lot of different third-party events. So basically when the pandemic started, I had to look to the demand gen team, and I was like, we're not going to hit our numbers. We're not even going to come close, because everything was basically. So our biggest thing is, like Kirstin said, we leaned on our partners and friends in the MarTech industry, and reached out to about 22 different companies and said, listen, you're all in the same position as us. We were all going to the same events. How can we band together in the next 3 weeks and put something on great so that we can still hit our numbers for this quarter? So Drift took the lead on it, and we developed this event called Rev Growth, which is a virtual event. And we partnered with those 22 different companies, took a small price on a sponsorship type side fee just to cover some of the speakers that we had. We repurposed some of our keynotes as well and pushed them towards virtual, so we didn't have to lose money, and then made it into 2 days of marketing and sales. And kind of the other hitch was, because we did it in 3 weeks, everyone was able to reuse their keynotes that they were already going to be using at these other events. So they had already planned for that content. So instead of losing it and doing it on a webinar or something like that, we're able to band together as a group. And in only 3 weeks, we had over 10,000 people register. So it was very effective, huge pipeline driver, great for our customers as well. And then from there, Drift decided that we needed to keep going. So then we basically just reiterated and reformatted that event 3 more times throughout the year. So we did 4 of them. Still partnering with a lot of the similar companies, but fine tuning that as well. First time going out, you just go with a bang, take the content. We're all just, let's solve for this problem now. But then realizing we needed to take a step back and look at the Drift brand as well, and make sure that we were getting the right speakers, the right content, and making sure there was more of a theme around the event. So that was one of our big pivots. Another one was we also were doing customer roundtables. So another very similar, like Kirstin was saying, we were going to bring a group to Sonoma. We were going to do the Airstream trailers, really the wine and dine of a customer experience. That didn't happen. So we birthed the Ascend series, which has been a virtual roundtable with peers. We pick them by segments of companies, and most of them have been demand gen focused, demand gen leaders, because everything was forced to be digital. And those conversations were twice a month, based off of what coast you're on, so that we could be cognizant of time zones. And we would have a vineyard owner join as well at the end. So we'd send you out a couple bottles of wine. The vineyard owner would come on, tell you about the wines, ask questions, and just overall a nice experience. And it's one thing that we've noticed in some surveys that we've done, that people ask that we still keep a virtual component to it, because they're not necessarily going to be able to fly to San Francisco or somewhere to experience that, and they really want to keep those conversations going.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and in just a bit, we'll talk a little bit more about looking ahead too. So, and so much of, I guess, last year, marketers are just figure it out, just do, test things out. And then now it
Push your sleeves up. We're all doing some weird jobs.
And now we're going to be in the reflect and improve and move forward. So would love to hear a little bit more about that later on. Carrina, let's move to you next.
Yeah. Well, I would say post shock of the pandemic, manufacturers really were kind of taking a pause to try to figure out, well, do we make PPE? Do we switch our manufacturing completely to something different that, is needed in this time? So I think, for about 2-3 months from a net new perspective, a lot of them just kind of said, stop, we've got to figure out our business. We need to understand our supply chain, our cash flow issues, try to figure out remote working now for manufacturing. And so many of our net new side, just like I said, just kind of took a pause. And from the customer side, as far as events go, we had planned to do our customer conference. And we basically said, we shut that down. Within that customer conference, we have a track for prospects that we always bring. And so we just basically shifted that to a virtual, essentially like 4 webinars in a series, and just shifted all the presenters to that. And it was actually very, very good to do that. We had an economics person, talk and just really kind of level set with our prospects of what's happening in the market and kind of have some calm to them. But we really, after it hit, I think we really focused on our customers. We created videos and put them on our website. And it was really, how can we help you through this time? Is there cash flow issues that you're having? We have resources for you. Are you trying to figure out how to get access to your systems, to your remote employees now? We have solutions for that. So it was all around what are their needs right now and how can we help them? And from our sales side, our customer account managers really did more one-on-one meetings, had team meetings. They jump on teams and have groups of people together just saying, hey, how can I help you? And same thing with the prospect side. We got webinars going that was really driven by our sales team to say, hey, I'm hearing you're asking these questions. Here's how we can help you with that. So it was more of a group effort that we all chipped in, and not just marketing doing webinars, but salespeople jumping in too to say, hey, we really want to help prospects as well as customers through this time. And as far as like our agenda, usually we do, virtual summits. We do those February and August typically. And our events are really structured around our launches, and what's coming out. So we really kind of structured our event of, how do we help you and what are those solutions to help you during this time? Yeah, as far as, more, we're always doing webinars to help our customers and educate them about solutions that can help them. So, we've really just kind of ramped up those webinars, as well as I mentioned, mini summits, I would call them, to go a little bit deeper versus just a webinar or an all-day virtual event. Where our virtual events are usually 1 day or 2 days. And our mini summits, I would call them, are more 3 hours, and they're, different sessions, but, be able to get a little bit more in depth and have that Q&A time. So that's kind of how we shifted during the pandemic.
All right. And Ray.
So kind of like Janna, when the closure started hitting, I was actually about to go on a plane to London to have a 2,000 plus event in the Olympia in London. So that one had to be canceled, and everybody had to be refunded their tickets. And we had to do a very quick pivot to just basically sending out an email to all the to all the attendees saying, all the pre-recorded elements, all the sessions were recorded right there at the Olympia. With nobody in attendance, and that was sent out as videos on demand to the people who could not have the event that they signed up for. With Intuit, we're very much a data-based company, so we really study every event, and we learn as quickly as we can, and we iterate really, really quickly. The first thing that we actually, the good thing really is we are a global company, so we are used to having virtual conferences as for internal events. We have this platform which is IBM based. We call it Intuit TV, and we leaned hard on that for the first few months, as well as Zoom. to get the employees talking together, the senior leadership talking to everybody else. That was our lifeline in terms of making sure that the culture, which Intuit really values, continues virtually. When it comes to the external events, things like QuickBooks Connect, which I am in charge of, this is a big external event, which has in live between 2,000 to 5,000 people, or things like investor days, or anything that includes other people other than Intuit employees. We actually had to really look at what platform is best for them. I am part of the Tiger team that keeps looking at technologies out there, technologies like Welcome, hi Roberto, to see what is going to be appropriate coming up, as we learn very, very quickly what to do and what would be appropriate. We had adopted Sugo, for most of our external events for many reasons. Because it was flexible for one, and we like to do things ourselves, and basically, we didn't want a one-size-fits-all solution. So that's what we did. That's what we have, but we will continue looking. I think what we're trying to solve right now is, how do you foster connection between people? Connections that are so important when people are live, you lose it in virtual. And you can't do an analog, version of what you used to do in a trade show floor. And try to what you created in virtual, and it just won't work. So you kind of have to think about that. How do you get people talking to each other? How do you get people who see each other on a yearly basis to welcome homecoming? How do you foster the tribe basically? So that's what we keep looking at, because we found out that the how people rate the events really was dependent on how well they could connect with each other and how well they feel after an event. So that's where we are. We continue evolving. As I said, it could be like an event for 25 of our top investors, all the way to like over 20,000 attendees that we've been doing, and it's evolving.
Wonderful. Yeah, I fully agree. And I think we're getting some thumbs up in the chat too. It's creating those authentic connections still, it was hard to do in person, right? Live, and now with the virtual factor. So I think that's something that everyone is still trying to understand and how to go about it, in a genuine way. So beautiful. Roberto, anything that you would like to add from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, for us on the other side of it, my co-founders and I actually produced and scaled events before Welcome. And so when we saw what was happening, we were building Welcome, and we were looking at differentiations and saying, this market needs to continue. Folks are going to have a long list of things to be done. What do we bet on as we're designing and as we're building? And we decided to land on experience, control, branding, all these things that marketers actually love as well. And so during our time, as folks were looking for opportunities, we were building this opportunity, right? And we were partnering with early customers on understanding, what are the non-negotiables? Like, what's the key driver? Is it to drive leads, to drive engagement, to drive awareness, and then building from that? And so we were in the lab per se, working with customers to figure out a solution.
Love it. All right. So let's shift to question number 2, which is current day plan. So when to plan for a return to live events. So it's kind of a 3-part question. So first, what are you discovering at the moment in preparation for the shift to live? And has your team started planning for any hybrid and or in-person events? Because I know there are some companies that are total ban, not till 2022. Others have already started to have kind of small outdoor events. So want to get a sense of what's going on currently. And then finally, for those of you that are planning the hybrid, what strategies are you leveraging or thinking about in terms of connecting the virtual and the in-person audience?
We're doing kind of what we call a crawl, walk, run with our events for the next 6 months or so. We do have a virtual event in June coming up, strictly virtual. We will be doing a Rev Growth in August, where we are going to add an in-person element to it. But instead of introducing a hybrid, we're going to do a VIP experience. So to like kind of mix it up a little bit. We have done some recordings over the last couple of months, like in our office with our internal team, and like COVID protocols. But now what the goal is for this next August event is to get on site into a great new environment where we can get some great footage, have the keynote speakers be live but pre-recorded, and then having a VIP experience for like our top guests of like tops 50 to 100 people. So two very separate things, and then broadcast it again virtually like we have done in the past. So it's kind of like that's just our crawl into it. Come November, early December, when we do our next Rev Growth on the West Coast, we are looking to introduce more of the hybrid experience and really figure out like what those events look like. Even when it's hybrid, I like to look at it as it's still two events because it's two different audiences on the level of you have to figure out what they're experiencing in person, what they're experiencing online, and how you're hitting all those senses throughout. So still working through what that experience looks like. And also I do find the challenge with like, how are you going to, like, is it a live stream? Is it a pre-recorded? Is it, it's in person this day, you air it the next day. So just kind of looking at all those different opportunities, but then also making it feel like it's like that studio audience. And I keep saying to my team, I'm like, I keep reverting back to sports. I'm a huge sports fan. I forgot to mention earlier, I'm in Boston. So I'm right now I'm heavy into the Bruins. Sports have always been a hybrid. So I think you can almost look at it that way as well too. So just kind of really filling all that out. And then we do plan on being fully in person for our first event in Q1.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, I love that crawl, walk, run strategy. Now that we have the time to prepare for something like this, right? The shift, it doesn't have to happen overnight.
Yeah, you don't want to kill your team. I feel like we've killed our teams quite a bit over the last year and a half, just trying to stay afloat, bandwidth, and just making sure we think it through and everybody feels comfortable around it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other point that you shared, just reflecting the kind of thinking of you're basically organizing two events in one, right? For that hybrid. And that's a great point, because if it's stuff that's pre-recorded, trying to think of what is that engagement or interactivity, does that really incentivize someone to join live, or, so those are things I'm sure a lot of marketers are trying to figure out too, in terms of what makes sense for hybrid. So
yeah, exactly. Especially now when you look at it, there's still so many out there, and there's always going to be a virtual component. It seems like it's not going away. We're all seeing the pipeline still, and we're seeing the great results. But how do you get people to attend? Yeah. On both levels.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So Carrina, would you like to go next at this question?
Well, our management team is ready to go in person in July. So we are actually hosting our July customer event in Vegas. So we have a full events team that manages this. So they are working with Vegas to make sure that we adhere to all of the safety protocols. So I would assume that, spacing, we'll have the big ballrooms, but we'll have a lot of spacing to adhere to that. I'm sure we'll have the hand sanitizers, people. I'm not sure about Vegas, the mask requirement, but I know some of those are being lifted in lots of different states. But if that is a requirement, we will adhere to that as well. But it may be that we just say either way, we're all just going to wear masks to make it so everybody feels comfortable. But our events team is really just looking at all of those protocol requirements and making sure we adhere to everything. But we actually did an email, to our customer base just to get an idea if they were open to this. And we did this a few months ago, and we had a number of people that said, yes, I plan to go. So that's why we're moving forward. So there's an appetite for some in-person event. So we'll see how that goes. I've looked at, events, how many, percentage wise of people, think that they'll go to anything this summer. And they say it's about 40% down. And we are seeing a little bit lower, I would say a lot lower, registrations right now, but it is starting to pick up, and our sales team is starting to see a lot more one-to-one interactions and requests to have them come to in-person meetings. So it feels like it's picking up. Manufacturers, it look like they're ready to go. So I think that's a positive sign, at least for our industry. Yeah. I think for us, we'll still continue to do our webinars. We have these planned out through September. We have our August virtual event planned. It's a 2-day event, a full day. and again, it aligns with our launch. So, that will be, really exciting. We've got some exciting new things coming out. So people are really excited about that. And yeah, I think, we're just moving forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I'm noticing one of the questions we had in the polls is, when do you plan to do in person and or hybrid? So we asked the audience, we have about 34 votes in. The winner is 41% for the fall, but there's also a good kind of second group looking at the spring. So that is something, that a lot of folks are in that boat as well. All right, Kirstin, would you like to jump in?
Sure. I think I'm going to echo the other two ladies. We are looking at some in-person events, and we're going to go slow towards the end of this summer. We're going to focus on outdoor activities, keep them relatively small. We're in California, so our opening up is somewhat slower than the rest of the area. So we're just going to be very sensitive to folks, and obviously, like Carrina said, whatever the local restrictions are or guidance. I've talked to a couple folks in Florida and Texas who are already doing a lot of events. And so I've heard some very interesting ideas just in terms of how you can help create visual aids. So whether it's wristbands or lanyards or whatever that have, for example, a red, yellow, green color. So red means I'm sensitive, kind of stay away. Yellow is, maybe elbows. Green is maybe hugs.
Yeah.
But there are some creative ways to create just a visual cue to help people understand the level of engagement when you're in person. So those are some things that we're thinking about. In our line of business, like I said, COVID, Carrina mentioned this too, what they did. We've really this last year been all about how can we help you respond to what's going on in your world. And, that for folks in our business, they are needing to find new ways to protect data, and they've got users everywhere. And so what do? And so we've been very focused on really not trying to sell ourselves, but to really come alongside and see, can we help you analyze things? Can we help you understand where you need help? And so all of that we have found to be very effective actually in virtual events. We've been able to create a lot of good communities that way. So we will continue to do that. And then as we move in person, that will probably be for more net new relationships and folks that maybe we haven't met, that don't really know us eyeball to eyeball, where we can start just building on those sensory things that you can't online, right? You read the body language, you have the jokes together or whatever, build that community. So that's really what we're going to use in person for. Honestly, I'm still struggling to figure out how hybrid works. And Janna talked about experience, right? And I'm perplexed how you create a valuable experience when you're trying to do both at the same time. So, for us, for the near term, we're going to focus on in-person being in-person, virtual being virtual. The virtual events we do, a lot of them we record, we have assets, kind of like you're going to do with this. We kind of break it up. We create, little snapshots of that, and we share. So we'll continue to do that. And I think we're just going to sit back and see, is hybrid necessary? And I kind of have a feeling that as things start to move, I think in person might happen faster than we think. And maybe hybrid is just a very short-term window of needing that. But then you'll be able to continue doing the in-person things that you do and the virtual things, with those goals.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for being honest. I think a lot of marketers are in that boat of quite literally, how does it look? How is it going to work? Our team, we're going through that motion now, and it's so many more layers of complexity, especially on the technical side. So we can talk about that in a bit. But the other point I wanted to reflect that I thought was very interesting is that that color kind of comfort band, that's wonderful. That's a really smart idea, because I think that, typically you're at a networking event, you shake hands, right? And you reach, and maybe it's going to be a no handshaking event. Maybe it's just going to be away from a distance, mask on. Or for those that are a little bit more open and comfortable, to your point, maybe they have the green and they're hugging, and it's a different different, level of boundaries. So that's going to be a whole thing, I think, that, marketers are going to have to think about as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
So as a company, Intuit has declared that for the rest of 2021, we are going to be virtual. So we are not planning any live in person anytime in 2021. We are looking at 2022 for when we start looking at doing live events. We are actually already looking in London in terms of places to possibly have them. Vegas is also on. It has already been booked for fall 2022. So we are definitely looking at that. We are definitely going to be having a hybrid, as a major part of our event strategy going forward. The reason is you just cannot unsee what we learned in 2021.
I love the conversation here, Kirstin. The bands, I'm stealing that idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a patent on that, but I'm gathering my company for a company offsite in the fall, and we're in the planning stages right now. And that's the question: is how do people feel comfortable? And I love just the idea of like respecting people's level of comfort and saying, okay, I respect that elbow over here, or I'll stay 6 feet away. But yeah, these are great conversations. I love the sports analogy there, Janna. Like there's always been hybrid, but right now is magnified. Like all of this is magnified in front and center, and we're all wondering the how. But we take a step back and just uncomplicate what's in front of us. I think that's the right sort of thread that we're seeing in the market, is that customers are saying, you know what, in-person events, we're going there. We can't wait to go there. But now we see this pipeline growth, and we're seeing the virtual impact and the global footprint that we've been able to impact because of that. These are just two different experiences, right? Now the question becomes, are there going to be in-person and virtual connections between people that are in person and people that are virtual? And that's where it gets gray, and that's where it gets complicated, and that's where we start to think about the Jetsons in terms of teleporting and all this. And in reality, I think something just kind of keep in mind if you did want to explore connecting two folks is the technical side of latency. I think what makes it powerful and possible to connect people, whether in person with a virtual audience, is making sure that they're getting the same level of experience in terms of knowledge transfer, right? So for instance, somebody's on stage and they're addressing that body of people saying, and we want to put a poll up. Well, you shouldn't be addressing, hey, what do people feel in the audience and what do people feel at home? Because that's not leveling the playing field. You just like disconnected the folks. But the technology has to be able to work, and it has to be real time, and you have to have the ability to engage both audiences. But yeah, so at a high level, we're personally as a company, we're going in the fall, getting the company together in person, and we're looking for the right level of safety procedures to make sure that everyone's comfortable. As a company, we're also seeing that customers are pushing a lot of this to next year. So Kirstin, you're not alone in terms of saying, I'm gonna do physical events next year. Virtual is gonna keep pushing our pipeline this year. And then next year, I'm also figure out how to serve both audiences, the physical and the virtual.
Yeah, I love that. And, kind of, I think the next question and kind of final question, I know I had way more planned out, but this always happens because the conversation gets so meaty. So in terms of the hybrid planning and figuring out, what is that main driver for virtual? And I think Roberto, you hit it, for us in our experience as an agency we actually did 150 events since the pivot from, the pandemic to virtual to date. The main driver has always been the content, the educational aspect, the knowledge sharing, but also that interactivity. Who am I going to meet? How are we going to connect? And then trying to, infuse that human connection piece as well. So we definitely see a possibility in this kind of seesaw, from virtual, maybe moving over into the hybrid. And maybe it'll kind of come back into the middle. Maybe folks will say, you know what, we tried hybrid, it was far more complex, and maybe we're going to stick with live only. Or others are going to say, hey, we did an event and we had two different groups and we maximized our reach. And I could definitely see, even if, if you're in New York and we're planning a lunch, at a nice restaurant, maybe you live in New York and you might join virtually too, right? There's still that convenience factor that I think so many folks have gotten used to. So all that to say, I guess kind of final question, what do you guys see will be the biggest challenge for event marketers, for demand gen leaders in the year to come, right? In terms of planning hybrid, maybe keeping virtual, maybe moving into the live space. So just kind of a general takeaway as we wrap up the panel portion. So Kirstin, do you want to take that question and we'll go around the room?
Sure. I guess I just think about our customers, right, and their timing. And I think for all of us, it's going to be about, we can push the envelope, we can open things up, we can make things available, but it's how comfortable, where are they willing to meet us? And so I think for the next, call it 6 months, 12 months, whatever, I think we've got to keep our channels open. Because we are going to have those people that are much more comfortable virtual for whatever reason. And maybe they always were. And now we're just opening up a new communication vehicle for them that we didn't have before. And then we're going to have people that are, that are dying to get out. They want to have conversations. They want to connect. They want to learn from their peers more and feel like they can do that more in person. And so I think we as marketers are just going to have to be be thinking out of both sides of our head and, be able to accommodate as we learn. And I think it's just going to be another facet of the last year, right? We scrambled, we hustled, and our teams were awesome, getting us to where we needed to be. And I think it's just going to be another year of adapting as we really see how do we come out of this, or what's the next chapter, more just listening and learning and just being sensitive to where our customer base or our prospects are.
All right, Janna, any thoughts there?
Of course, customer is always the center of everything at Drift. The one thing I look at it when I'm thinking of the future with events too is we're all event planners. We know how to check all the boxes and make sure everything goes well. We know how to handle things that they don't, if something happens during the event, et cetera. So I do feel confident that all of us can handle this going back into the new normal and all the different playing fields with the COVID protocols, et cetera. I think now the biggest challenge is going to be getting people to attend the events in person or virtually. Because again, like we said, people are very adapted, to being at home. I couldn't believe I had to wash my hair this morning and put some makeup on for all of you. Put that in my calendar. So you look at that as well. And even thinking about going back to an office full time. So I think you need to take that consideration into play, because then they're also thinking about, do I want to travel and leave my families? What is going to drive me to get on that plane or that train? What is Drift going to give me at that event that I can't already get sitting at home? So I think that's I find is the biggest challenge as an event marketer.
Beautiful. Carrina, anything to add there? And then I want to take a few questions from the audience.
Sure. I think, all the points that were already mentioned, I would reiterate the same thing. But I think, I'm pretty excited about the future. I love marketing because of the variety and the change, and that change is opportunity, really. And I think trade show booths are going to look really different in the future. Lots of hands-free technology, maybe. Some just really cool things I'm looking forward to seeing. What comes to mind is the movie, Minority Report, where he's moving things around. Maybe there's some cool things that you're not touching anything, but you're able to experience, technology that way. I get, VR and all that, but maybe there's some cool things that will come out of this that, everybody's, super excited and you can create that experience at a in-person event that you can't get anywhere else that, might drive them. I think overall, virtual or in person, it's about creating that cool experience that kind of makes them want to attend. And for our customer event in July, we've got some great keynotes and live entertainment that's going to be there. So those are, one way, that's one way to drive people to say, hey, it's Vegas, I've got some entertainment, so it's a free concert, So it's all about looking at the whole overall package of the, experience you're going to get to learn the technology, talk to experts, maybe have some fun there too. So, again, but it's all in the comfort level of the attendee and what they want to participate in.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Beautiful. All right, so folks, let's take some questions that came in from the audience. We have a question from Laura. What did you try for virtual this past year that did not work out as anticipated? Then what did you do to shift or correct it in the next time around?
I think I overthought it. I was trying to add too many elements. I got really excited and was like, we need to recreate this experience like it's a live event. And I had the yoga sessions, the DJ, the breaks, like everything was kind of all, there's all these different things. And then when I sat down and thought about it afterwards, it was really just, you need to simplify and just have a couple of elements in there. And then it went much smoother. It felt like we had more engagement. So yeah, I just simplify is what my CEO has said to me multiple times. He's like, stop overthinking these things.
Yeah, even today I had way more questions planned out, and it's the less is more, so that's good. Beautiful. Any other panelists want to add to that?
I hinted at this earlier, but one of the things we did that did not work early on, and maybe to Janna, opposite, we thought we could plug and play something that had traditionally been in person into a virtual. And so we went with a strong partner we had used for in-person events. They were putting something out there. We were all trying to respond quickly. And it just didn't work. The technology wasn't effective. The people, Janna, we talk about engagement, right? They couldn't engage. I mean, it took half the event for people to even introduce themselves, and then there was nothing left. So, I mean, it just didn't work. And so we looked at that and said, okay, so how do we think different about this? And that's when we started standing up things on our own to say, okay, how do we add that experience? How do we add that value? What are they going to get? Because everyone was inundated with webinar invitations. I mean, that's what this past year has become, right? So we really had to switch thinking there. And for group events, it was more, kind of adding a comedian, adding wine and cheese, doing just fun things. And people wound up talking to each other. People wound up having fun. And that was where we got connection. And then we focused, for some demand gen, where can we find people who are really, really good at helping, set up one-on-one meetings. And so instead of doing big events where we thought maybe we could do one-to-many, we started saying, where can we do one-on-one? That's where we really, because that's where we can build a relationship in these big groups. There was not the welcome technology. So, that's probably very different now, but it wasn't as settled early on. So, I think trying to plug and play virtual and in person and just assuming that they can work in the same way, that was not the right way to go.
For us, our prospect track within our Insights conference, our customer conference that we did, we just had to shift it to virtual, and we just made it into 4 webinars essentially. And it just, it got attendees, it got registrations. It just didn't have the same vibe, the same experience, the same feel to it. And I think if I did it again, I would make it into a full day virtual summit type style where and have more live elements to it. It just kind of the experience just wasn't there. So that would be how I would shift it. And then we also did those beverage type events where it's at home and you get the drinks and you can have kind of just that fun activity. I think people were yearning for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Beautiful. All right, next question is from Laura LaPaz. So how did you handle the dip in webinar/event registrations last year if your goal was lead generation? So maybe switching up the format, or you just keep going?
We did ours instead of a 1 day, a 2 day, just to give people more time to do what they need to do in their, in their environment, their daily life. And we saw a number of people decided just to have on demand as well. So that just really spiked up. So yeah, we were just trying to listen to our customers and try to figure out, is this format work for you? And, kind of get that information ahead of time and then switch it up for them.
We ended up cutting back too as well. So we originally had 2 days, but 2 very, very stacked days, and then went down to half a day. And even now we're looking at it only doing like 3 to 4 keynotes and a drift keynote, and that's it. And just keeping it more concise. And that seems to be working much better.
Okay. And so for this final question from Kirstin, we're actually going to invite her to the stage. So let's bring her up. So do you allow Q&A after keynote, or breakout sessions during your hybrid events?
Yeah, so I recently attended a local event put on by our Chamber of Commerce. They invited our women's group from my company to attend. And they had hybrid, in-person, and virtual. And I was a virtual attendee, and there was folks in person that we could see sitting in there. So when someone in the audience would ask a question, we couldn't hear it being an online virtual attendee. So in my mind, I was thinking, okay, if they would have thought this through, perhaps they would have repeated the question, on stage before they answered it, because, as a virtual attendee, I thought, I have no idea what the question was, but I hear the great answer. So I didn't know how you guys kind of work through that. If you have a hybrid event, how do you handle Q&A when you have both in-person and virtual attendees?
Yeah, I can sort of lead that one here for us. Just from seeing what our customers currently are doing and what they have done. We had an event in November of last year, believe it or not, and it was hybrid. Customer gathered a small group of people, brought the cameras in, piped the video feed into the platform, and they did exactly this. You see, this question is on stage, and so now people that are in the audience and people that are virtual always have context about what's happening, right? But second to that is having it as real time as possible enable the speaker on stage to pose a question and get engagement and responses, like a poll, for instance, in real time from both audiences, right? And so it's what we found that customer do was really take the intention to plan those small, nuanced connection types, but very important, right? To say, you know what, it's going to be real time. We're actually going to put this question on stage. If not, we're actually going to go ahead and repeat that question. And that made all the difference, right? To make sure that the person that's virtual has context and they feel like they're still part of the experience. I think the thing to hit and not overcomplicate, and I feel like what's happening in the panel is this echoing sort of theme around simplification. Is like finding what works for you and then simplifying for the outcomes you desire. In this case, they decided to say, we're going to use the Q&A portion and bring the questions on stage to make sure that everyone can see the context, regardless of the audience. And it just levels the playing field for both parties.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did that as well. We had a employee in person as well as virtual event. And I think as we started, it was initially online they don't know what you said, so we had some bumps to begin with. And then it became apparent, like, you need to repeat the question, you need to either type it in or, do some other things to make sure both sides are interactive and, know what's going on. So that was a lesson learned really quick.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Welcome.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
So I mean, actually, this is an ongoing problem, and especially with trying to get people up to speak. For our Investor Day, for example, it's actually required by the government, by SEC, that whoever is asking the question be actually live. So the whole idea of like taking somebody from the audience, bringing them up as a panelist, making them present, and everything, it's a little bit weird still, especially with Zoom. So it still needs to be solved. Using Slido is another one. Basically, getting people putting their answers up on Slido and queuing it up. Having a really good moderator also really helps right now until we find that magic bullet. So really, a moderator that can sing and dance, while you ask the questions are being asked, is right now the key. But I don't know, Roberto. Right now, it doesn't. There's no answer right now about taking hybrid questions, live questions, and answering them.
Yeah, I'll also just share from our perspective, Kirstin, we're also envisioning, so, in a restaurant, let's say private room, we're actually thinking we're going to have 2 cameras on the panel and the moderator. The moderator would be physically in person, but they would be able to kind of take those questions and answer it. And we would have a live feed, to the folks that are virtually joining and listening in. And another goal, similar to how we invited you up here, is for us to also take questions from the group virtually. So we actually envision having a moderator and a producer, virtually running the group, similar to how we're doing it here, and then having a host, moderator host as well. So it's going to be, again, more staff, more hands on deck, but that way we can make the 2 groups interactive. So yeah, so that's how we're envisioning it. So I just wanted to share that.
Great feedback.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, folks. So thank you, panelists. We really appreciate it.